The Redmi 10 came out here in Malaysia today, actually. As you're watching this video, the live date and the announcement just went out for it. But we've had it for a couple of days to test it out so we can give you guys our honest thoughts and opinions on it. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right in. So let's begin with the unboxing of the Redmi 10. The unboxing process is pretty standard from what we've seen from Redmi. The version that we got is the 4 gigs of RAM, 64 GB of storage, Pebble White. Getting into the box itself, you've got the powered by Redmi printed up front. You've got the SIM card ejector tool in there as per usual, as well as the bunch of documents that are included with it. We've also got the clear case included, which also has that little protection knob at the bottom to not let any dust or stuff go into your ports. As far as the phone itself is concerned, you've got all the major specs up front. 50 megapixel AI quad camera with dual speakers, 90 Hz of refresh rate, 6.5-inch Full HD Plus dot display with AdaptiveSync, high performance MediaTek Helio G88 processor, as well as a 5000 mAh battery capable of 18-watt fast charging. Setting that aside, let's look at what else we have in the box. You've got the Type-C cable included, as well as the power brick to fast charge the device included with it. Peeling off the cover and the sticker, I was actually surprised by how good this device really looks. I don't know whether it's the Pebble White or what it really is. The design of this is very nice and elegant looking. I'll talk more about this a little bit later, but there you go. You've got the quad camera setup at the back, as well as that Redmi logo at the back. So for ports, you've got a Type-C port at the bottom facing speaker as well as microphone. On the right, we have the power button integrated with the fingerprint sensor, as well as the volume rockers. At the top, you've got the 3.5mm headphone jack, as well as the top facing speakers, while on the left, you have the SIM card tray. Now, this does accept dual SIMs, so both 4G, as well as supporting a micro SD card for expandable storage. Jumping right into the setup of the device, if you've watched any of our videos or seen any setup of Android devices, this is pretty much the same. Quickly set up the fingerprint sensing there as well with the power button, and that's pretty much it. You're in the Redmi 10. Software-wise, this is pretty much the same. You've got the same feel, notifications on the left, and the control center control panel on the right side of the phone. Now jumping right into the settings for us to take a look at all of the various settings. You've got MIUI 12.5.1 global version that is running, 64 GB of storage, 4 gigs of RAM, with the CPU being the octa-core max 2 GHz. Now, moving further, we're going to change the display of this to 90 Hz because we want to use it at its max potential. And immediately doing that, obviously, you see a huge change. It becomes a lot quicker, snappier, and smoother overall. Next, let's move on to the build quality and the design on this. This is honestly one of the things I like the most about the device. It's got a really nice premium design and a really exquisite look to it. Very different from what we've seen within the same price range. I do like how it looks, the curves to it, everything overall, especially with the Pebble White matte finish. It just really looks nice and elegant. One thing I did notice, which I found pretty interesting, is that you've got this little black separation, black border around the display of the device. So if you zoom in there, you can see there's a little protrusion from the side of the device to where the display is. I haven't seen other phones do this. I'm not sure why they've done this either, but it does add a little bit of thickness to the device overall and makes the display look slightly further out from the device. But regardless, the overall look to the device is very sleek and elegant looking, and for the price point, it looks a lot more premium than it probably is. Now moving on to the display on this. Now the display on this is a 90 Hz 6.5-inch Full HD Plus dot display with AdaptiveSync. The display performance is quite nice. You've got a nice punchy display, decent colors, nice contrast levels, and the brightness on this gets up pretty high as well. Now all of this is really great when you're looking at it head on. The second you start tilting the display, you get pretty bad viewing angle. So that's one of the things I had the biggest complaint with on the display for this is the viewing angle. So unless you're viewing it head on, you won't get the best image out of it. Sure, this isn't much of a problem if you're browsing through social media and watching videos here and there, but this is something you'll kind of notice if you use it long term. So if you see the brightness there, it's at max, but when I tilt it, it just gets a lot dimmer and darker and way more washed out. Speaking of media consumption, it does come with a dual speaker system, as I mentioned. So you've got two-way firing speakers, both for left and right. The sound balance is pretty standard, I guess you could say. You get pretty decent mids and highs. The lows are kind of lacking, and at higher volumes, it can be a bit tinny, but it's pretty good for watching content on or playing games on. Next, let's take a look at one of the things I was pretty keen on checking out, which is the camera performance. As far as the camera is concerned, you've got that quad camera set up at the back, much like the other Redmi devices. The cameras on here are the 50 megapixel main shooter with f1.8, 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, a 2 megapixel camera for macro, as well as a 2 megapixel depth sensor. The camera on the front is an 8 megapixel camera. The specs aside, how does this camera actually perform? The images that come out of the device look pretty good. So you get decent contrast levels, nice colors, exposure is pretty good, HDR levels are nice as well. Moving on to the ultra wide angle camera, you do lose out on a lot of detail as well as the saturation being kind of overboard, but my main issue would be the detail loss, if anything. Now the main camera lens has a pretty good background blur default without any portrait mode turned on, so you can see the background blur looks pretty nice, especially with close-up shots like a flower. But the portrait mode itself looks very nice. You've got very nice edge separation and the skin tones also look pretty good. With the front camera, you get pretty decent edge separation, but the tones are kind of off. Speaking of off, the macro lens looks pretty terrible. It looks like it's been taken with a camera from the early 2000s. Please get rid of this lens. The 50 megapixel image on the right side, as you can see, looks a little bit more detailed when you zoom in, but honestly, if you do crop it side by side at 600%, you don't really see that much difference. The video performance for the main camera is kind of subpar. You can see that the sharpening is kind of exaggerated. It does it really harshly. The colors are okay, slightly on the warmer side, and the stabilization is absolutely terrible. Very bad stabilization. The ultra wide angle image looks a little bit better. The colors look a little bit more balanced and the HDR looks quite nice. But again, that stabilization really does kill this. So does that over sharpening. I do think this is overall just very over sharp. Same with the front camera. All of these do record at 1080p 30 fps maximum frame rate, and here again the sharpness is very harsh, so is the exposure level. As you can see behind me, it's kind of overexposed and it does lose a lot of detail. But yeah, overall very standard quality, not the best. So all in all, I think the camera is pretty standard, nothing extraordinary, not really terrible, neither is it really great, just mediocre. You can take pretty good pictures with it if you know what you're doing and you have enough lighting. However, I feel like the lens selection could have been a little bit better. We could have added the tele macro lens on here instead of the 2 megapixel macro that I do not like at all. But otherwise, it's a pretty good camera phone for the given price range. Very standard. Let's move on to performance for this for day-to-day work and gaming. The processor on this is the new MediaTek Helio G88 processor, which honestly is too early to tell how it performs long term, but here's what we got. It's pretty usable. I had a little bit of stutter issue when it came to multitasking, going through different applications, having many apps open in the background. During gaming, it was quite alright. I was comfortable with it. I didn't have any spikes of lag, if that's something you guys are wondering. So a very standard performance. I think if I had to describe this whole device in one word, it would be very moderate. It's a very standard moderate device that does everything that it's supposed to pretty well. Lastly, we've got 5000 milliamp hours of battery with 18 watts fast charging as well as 9 watts reverse wire charging. So the box includes a 22.5 watt charger for the USB Type-C port. So that's pretty much it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about the Redmi 10 for the more long-term review, let us know down in the comments because we will be making more content with this and we would appreciate you guys' questions so we can answer those. Really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, a like would be appreciated. Consider subscribing to the channel for more content just like this, and we'll see you again in the next video. Until then, bye bye.